The MLB team that signs Roki Sasaki might end up paying more than just money for him. We have more on that and more on where Torey Lovullo finished in the NL Manager of the Year voting. Some of you are going to be furious. Don't go anywhere. We'll be here in 30 seconds. Welcome into another edition of the PHNX D-Backs podcast, live from Studio K, presented by our friends at Circle K. My name is Derek Monti, occasionally known as your mayor of PHNX. This man next to me is the other half of the Christmas colors here that we got going on. It's the one and only Thunderstick Jesse Freeman.
We did not coordinate this.
We didn't coordinate this. Yeah, I would definitely would have worn red to go with him for sure. But welcome in. Ski to you all. We love to have you here. And of course, we have so much to talk about, even though it's the off season. First, I wanted to give a special shout out to our guy, Casey, who stopped by yesterday and observed our show to do a paper on it for ASU. We love you guys. We appreciate you, Casey, so much. And so many of you guys that have been like day one diehards. We can't thank you guys enough. Of course, if you are interested in becoming a diehard, make sure to go PHNX.com and find out how you can do so. So many wonderful benefits, including free access to our upcoming live Q&A with Archie Bradley over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. So do not miss out on that. Very, very fun event.
It's wild to me that we're doing that.
It's wild to me that Archie Bradley appears on the show with us every once a week and then just answers every question we ask. But you're right, like being able to do it live and in person. Like I know so many people of our diehards have enjoyed asking questions so far, but yeah, to be able to do it in person, let me tell you from experience, is pretty electric. It's pretty electric, Jesse. But,
yeah.
Of course, speaking of things that are electric, it's fairly electric when Jesse is so absolutely correct. And when it comes to the Rule 5 draft, the Arizona Diamondbacks have selected a few members, at least one guy that we talked about yesterday.
I was not completely correct.
No,
one of these guys is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Diamondbacks selected Tim Tawa and Joe Elvis, protecting them from the full Rule 5 draft, adding them to their 40-man roster before the 4 p.m. deadline yesterday. 40-man roster is currently at 37. We talked a bit about Tawa yesterday and all the things that he can do, literally everything. And I mean, I'm a little bit disappointed that he hasn't, gone out there and given us at least 6 innings of strong relief work on the mound, but he has done almost every single thing else on the mound. Or on the mound, I should say. Nothing on the mound.
Nothing on the mound. He'll get there. It's only a matter of time.
We'll get him there.
Yeah, Tim Tawa is a 25-year-old utility player that we did discuss on the show yesterday. Is someone that the Diamondbacks might consider protecting if they had not protected him from the Rule 5 draft. I think there's a pretty decent chance that he would be selected for the reasons that we discussed yesterday. He's a guy that, maybe you're not envisioning Tim Tawa becoming a superstar in a few years, sure, but he's a guy that has value on paper, right?
Absolutely.
Someone who can play every single position, except for catcher and unfortunately pitcher as well. Allegedly. But yeah, he's a guy who reached AAA toward the end of the 2024 season, played his final 37 games there, and slashed 304, 376, 616. So you put up those kind of numbers in AAA. Yeah. You have some defensive flexibility. You can play a lot of different positions. That's a guy that teams value. And the Diamondbacks did what we kind of expected them to do and added Tawa to the 40-man roster, and he now cannot be selected in the Rule 5 draft.
What I find really interesting about this, and we'll get to some of the guys that are at risk of being drafted, I find it fascinating because we talked yesterday how there's not a lot of success typically out of guys that are Rule 5 draft eligible. So usually there's not a lot of big names. There's not guys that can be drafted and then go to another franchise and potentially stay on that roster for the full season. Tawa is one of those guys, to be honest. Based on his versatility alone, it's not necessarily that he's going to be, like Jesse said, a superstar in the league, but it's about his contributions to a team. And when you have a guy that can successfully play every position on the diamond essentially, and at least have value in doing so, and maybe even contribute offensively. There's so much that a depth that could add to a team simply by adding that one player, and I could see why he would be one of the guys potentially of the ones that we spoke about yesterday that a team would be interested in based on that. It is like the critical part of that is that they do have to find a way to keep whichever guy they do draft on their major league roster for the entire season. Tawa, again, is not going to be a starter on any team, most likely, and none of these guys most likely are. But again, that's the reason why relief pitchers and utility guys like this that can play a bunch of positions, those are the ones that are typically at risk because they could end up being very successful in major leagues and they could end up staying on a roster for the entire season.
Another factor with Tawa and really every Diamondbacks position player prospect, I guess prospect in general, is that it's a very hitter-friendly environment in AAA, right? And in AA as well. So it's hard to know what to do with that 304, 376, 616 slash line that looks so extraordinary. It's hard to know exactly how to interpret that. So we don't have any of the batted ball data from AA, but we do get batted ball data from AAA. So I took a look at some of those numbers. His expected stats are sure enough quite a bit lower than his actual stats. His expected batting average in those 37 AAA games, 265. His expected OBP was 347. Expected slug was 474. So all that works out to an expected weighted on base average or xWOBA of 357, which is good. It's definitely above average, but a helpful comparison we can make here is Adrian Del Castillo, a guy who was very, very good in AAA, and we saw him have some success in the majors as well. Adrian Del Castillo had a 384 xWOBA in AAA this year when he was there. So that's about a 30-point difference, which is significant. I'm not expecting Tim Tawa to come up to the majors and tear the cover off the ball necessarily the way that Del Castillo did. But these numbers are still solid. They're still good enough where you could imagine a scenario where Tawa comes up to the majors next year at some point and could hold his own offensively. Maybe he's not going to be a huge asset offensively. I imagine the Diamondbacks would want him facing lefties a lot more than righties if they could help it. The splits certainly support that. And looking at these numbers, I think there's a case to be made that he could be effective in that role.
And honestly, I think that he's also a guy that the Diamondbacks kind of need. That we know that the Diamondbacks are going to be losing several of their position players right now, like Kevin Newman, that give them that depth. And he is a guy that absolutely could contribute to this team, help them fill that role without them needing to go out in free agency and spend that money on filling that role. However, the flip side to this is that we talked about a lot of names yesterday, and we did not bring up Joe Elvis at all. And it is, quite frankly, a shock that the Diamondbacks added Joe Elvis, right-handed pitcher, to the 40-man roster. Now, the shock is that I wouldn't have guessed in a million years that a team would be even looking at Elvis based on some of his numbers and the fact that he just got to AA, 8 starts in AA last year. Like, again, the one important caveat in all of this Rule 5 draft stuff is that, you know, these guys have to stay on the major league roster for an entire year. We were skeptical about that with Davis and De Los Santos. We knew. We were like, I don't know if you're going to be able to keep him over there, Guardians, and we'll see you back soon.
They were trying him. They were trying him in the outfield.
They were trying him in the outfield. Like, they were trying to do anything they could work, right? Meanwhile, Joe Elvis, 22-year-old right-handed starter, spent most of 2024 in high A, but made 8 starts for the Amarillo Sod Poodles to finish the season and didn't really put up great numbers. Now, it is Amarillo, just like Reno, so there always is that asterisk against it, or next to it, I should say. But again, in 16 starts for high A, 2.79 ERA with a 1.14 whip and a 217 opponent batting average. Meanwhile, double A, 8 starts, 4.60 ERA, 1.29 whip, 2.35 opponent batting average.
Yeah, good numbers, right? Especially the high A numbers. I mean, a 2.79 ERA, a 1.14 whip, like that. That's pretty good. For this was his age 21 season, so he is young.
I spent my age 21 season just drunk the whole time, so I can't relate.
Joe Elvis is he's making the most of his 20s. Yeah, so in Double A, the 4.60 ERA, that it doesn't jump off the page, but given the environment in Amarillo, that's pretty decent. And I know Nick Pecora over at the Arizona Republic wrote about this, and he said the Diamondbacks viewed Elvis as a must-add. There was not any doubt in their minds about this decision, apparently, which I think it says a lot about the Diamondbacks' internal evaluation of this player. Sure. He's not someone who is, shown up as a top 10 prospect in the organization or anything on any public list that we have. But the Diamondbacks clearly value him more highly than maybe other teams around the league. And this is someone they wanted to make sure that they didn't lose. I don't know if Elvis will necessarily be like the first line of defense for the Diamondbacks. If a starting pitcher goes down, I think he's probably fairly low on the depth chart to open the season, but he now has a 40-man roster spot, and that means that he does have a bit of an inside track to making the big leagues at some point next season.
That's a good point, and that's something to remember with all of these guys, is just being on the 40-man roster doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to, be on the major league roster. It just means that they could, have them in AAA Reno next year. Yeah. And again, he can continue, like with a pitcher, sub 5 ERA in either of these ballparks, I think is pretty good. So I think, there's not a lot from Amarillo that you're going to see and be like, yep, we're ready to move him up to the next level. Both leagues are difficult for pitchers to pitch in. Both leagues are very hitter friendly. Both ballparks are very hitter friendly. So again, like you said, mostly for depth, but again, also just a bit surprising as an outsider, considering all of that stuff that we've talked about, that Rule 5 draft, or draftee has to be on your franchise. So interesting to see. There's also some guys that the Diamondbacks did not protect that some people are well aware of and are familiar with. Christian Robinson being one of those guys, Kyle Backus, AJ Vukovic, among others. So there's a few guys there that obviously now are in jeopardy of being drafted by another team.
Right. Yeah. And we did talk about some of these guys yesterday. Christian Robinson is, one of the best prospects in the game about 5 years ago, which is a long time at this point. But as we've discussed, you can still see the tools there. You can still see the power. You can still see, I think he recorded the fastest sprint speed of anyone in the Arizona Fall League. Like, he can still run like crazy. So
that's crazy. I did not know that.
The tools with Christian Robinson are still there 100%. There are some reasons to wonder if he could stick in the majors for an entire season, though, which is, again, what this ultimately comes down to. If another team really likes Christian Robinson, the prospect, that's great. But if they actually want to take him out of the Diamondbacks organization, they have to commit to keeping him on the active roster for the entire season. And I think that's a tall ask for someone like Robinson, who just had, I believe it was a sub 700 or around a 700 OPS in AA. So he was great in the Fall League, but the recent body of work there is not all that great. A couple of other guys that they left unprotected, left-handed reliever Kyle Backus. I think there's a decent chance that another team would be interested in Backus as, kind of a depth left-handed reliever. And then AJ Vukovic, another guy we've discussed as a prospect who's been in the system for a long time, formerly pretty well thought of, still shows up on top 30 lists in general. Yeah. D-backs tried him out in center field a little bit in 2024. I don't know if that's really all that viable home for him moving forward. But he's still, I believe, 22 years old and reached AAA this year. So maybe there's a team out there that wants to give him a shot.
What has he played so far? He's played like third base, right?
Yeah, he came up as a third baseman. Yeah. That was his original position. I think they tried him in corner outfield spots and then also in center field. I think center field is probably going to be a little bit of a stretch from what I know there. But when a guy is still sort of coming up through the system and a little ways away, you can afford to experiment a little bit. And I think the Diamondbacks were basically just trying to do that.
It's interesting because there are some teams out there that when you look at some of the announcements being made, like the Tampa Bay Rays, which we are going to get into their entire stadium situation before this show is over, because that is a whole nightmare.
You think the Diamondbacks stadium situation is messy. Wait till you hear about the Tampa Bay Rays.
You want new air conditioning? How would you feel about having just an entire new roof, right? Yeah. Like there's a whole bunch of things.
Well, the Diamondbacks could probably use a new roof too, but they're not as in dire need of a new roof people. As the Tampa Bay Rays
it's a safety issue, Jesse, and you know it. All right. Well, I will say this. What do you
I was just going to say, because you could become the Cowboys, and that's what you don't want. You need a working roof.
Nobody wants to be the Cowboys.
You need a working roof.
Does the Cowboys' roof not work?
Yeah, they had a whole
incident. They opened it for the first time in decades this past week, and 2 pieces almost fell onto people and killed them, and it was not good.
See, and that's the reason why the Diamondbacks' roof isn't broken, and that's one thing I constantly have to correct people on. By the way, it's not broken. They just finally had a safety inspector come in and go, you guys have no fail-safe that can protect people on this, right? And you never have. But that's a whole other thing. We've always been in jeopardy. They just recently had somebody actually put a stamp on it. That's the difference. But yeah, no, I mean, the Tampa Bay Rays are struggling to find bodies just to fill positions and be starting players there. There might be a couple of other teams in the league that are in a similar position where none of these guys would necessarily be starters, but like Backus could add to a bullpen, or these guys could add to the depth for a team looking for anything right now at this point to improve their team, or at least put out living bodies on a field of people with a heartbeat to play baseball.
Yeah, and that's something you have to keep in mind. Like, the Diamondbacks are in a very different place as a franchise than the Chicago White Sox. Or
I knew that's where you were going to go. There was no doubt in my mind that's where you were going to go.
They're kind of an easy target after the season they just had. Yeah. But yeah, like other teams, the Diamondbacks might not be eager to use some of these guys in the majors immediately, but other teams don't necessarily have a lot of better options than some of these guys that the Diamondbacks are leaving exposed to the Rule 5 draft. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Diamondbacks had a player, maybe multiple players, selected in Rule 5. It will be interesting to see how that unfolds.
Well, we will keep you posted once that occurs. And of course, we will always have you covered with everything Diamondbacks related, including also where Torey Lovullo finished in the NL Manager of the Year voting. And boy, I hope Thunderbolt 47 is here today, because I would love to hear his thoughts on that. And we have so much more. So of course, we do thank you guys for being here in the PHNX Sports YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I don't know what you're waiting for, but do so right now. Hit that notifications button. That way you don't miss whenever our shows go live. And most importantly, for my self-esteem, to show Jesse love, to appreciate the holiday colors that we coordinated on here, hit that like button. If you're listening on the audio podcasting side, make sure you subscribe in your favorite audio podcasting app. And of course, leave us a review. We always appreciate that feedback. It means the world to us. On the other side of this break, we are going to talk about Roki Sasaki and the decision a team will have to make that could cost them more than just money when it comes to other international signees. We will have that on the other side of this break. Don't you go anywhere. Well, of course, Empire Today isn't going anywhere. Empire Today has been in the Valley for years, and they are a name you know and trust when it comes to repairing your floor, giving you new flooring, coming into your house and making your house more beautiful. Working with Empire Today is easy, quick, and convenient. They will not waste your time. They will find out what you're looking for and not make you look through thousands of samples. They will offer you a curated product selection that will get down to your needs and show you exactly what you're looking for without wasting too much of your time. They also have a virtual floor designer, which is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. It's easy. All you got to do is snap a picture and instantly see how new floors will look in your room. Shopping for floors at a big box store can be awful. So make sure you do it with someone that knows what they're doing. And of course, Empire Today also services their own warranties. So if an issue does arise, you don't have to go finding all those people to find out who's responsible for your warranty. You can just call Empire and they will take care of everything. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount when you use promo code PHNX. Restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. And no matter the moment, whatever the moment, it is never ordinary at Bet365. Of course, Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide, and that's for a good reason. They do offer the widest range of games and markets available for live in-game betting across 78 sports, which is just bonkers. They even offer esports for those of you out there that are maybe a little OP video game players, of course. See for yourself all the wonderful things they have to offer with their Thursday night touchdown offer. You can place qualifying parlay bets totaling $20 or more on Thursday's game and get bonus bets for every single touchdown scored. Terms and conditions apply. Download the Bet365 app right now and use that code of PHNX365 when you sign up. Place a bet of $5 or more and get $150 in bonus bets. Find out why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. Bet365 must be 21 or over and physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, text NEXT STEP to 53342 or visit problemgambling.az.gov. Well, we know that the Arizona Diamondbacks, much like every team in Major League Baseball, is in on the Roki Sasaki sweepstakes, and that's because as an international amateur, it will not cost very much in the grand scheme of things to sign him, but it will cost essentially everything a team has to offer international signees. So, and that's where the problem comes in. Whichever team does sign Sasaki will most likely have to use their entire international signee pool to acquire him. What does that mean for anybody else that they have signed, Jesse, or at least verbal commitments to?
It's not great, Derek. It's not great. Basically, if a team, which we suspect, as you just said, if a team was to use their entire international bonus pool in order to sign Roki Sasaki, which we think that's probably what's going to happen, right? I mean,
it feels like what it's going to take, right?
I don't know why you wouldn't be willing to offer that with a guy of Sasaki's caliber out there, and there's obviously going to be a lot of competition to sign him, and so you're not going to want to get outbid by someone by a couple $1 million or whatever. So yeah, the problem is that, as we've discussed in the past, the Major League Baseball system for signing international amateurs is a complete mess. And this is a very, very messy aspect of it, where these teams have had agreements with international amateurs for potentially years, going back to when they were 12 or 13 years old. And they're just verbal agreements. There's nothing official. You can't make anything official before the actual signing period in which you sign them is open and you're able to make the deal official. But these agreements are struck years in advance, and sometimes these agreements do fall by the wayside, either on the team side or on the side of the player for various reasons. But at this stage, I mean, in late November, with the next signing period opening in mid-January, those deals are pretty rock solid. Like, if teams have verbal commitments with guys right now for that January 15th signing period, they're planning on signing these players, and the players are planning on signing these deals as well. And so what is likely going to happen is whatever team signs Roki Sasaki is just going to have to abandon all of those verbal commitments, leaving those international amateurs, who again are 16, 17 years old oftentimes, in a really unfortunate state of limbo, where they're just not going to sign the deal that they expected to sign. And they could maybe try to strike a deal at what would probably be a lower dollar figure with another team, or they could try to just wait a year and sign with a team next signing period, next January. So it's a mess all the way around.
It's devastating though, because like you said, a lot of times these guys were these young adults were children when they entered into a verbal agreement, when their parents consented to them entering into a verbal agreement with a baseball team. And from that point on, that team aided that child essentially in their development as far as becoming a pro baseball player from that point on. And this is actually very interesting that it comes up when it does, considering that the Arizona Diamondbacks on Monday just opened their brand new state-of-the-art facility in the Dominican Republic, right? This is the exact type of thing that we're talking about. These are the young men, the young athletes that the Diamondbacks bring into a facility like this. They help train them. And it goes beyond that. We talked about that this goes beyond baseball, and this is one of those things for some of these guys that are never going to make the major leagues. This is just a way to a better life. But for the ones whose dream is to make it into the majors, and the ones who are capable of doing that based on their talent and their athleticism, that's a sobering day when suddenly this team that has kind of, been a part of your life and a part of your family throughout your entire, last maybe 4, 5, 6 years of your life suddenly says, oh, hey, about that, we got this really good pitcher from Japan coming over and we're going to sign him. So we can't sign you, and like you said, there's a good chance that other Major League Baseball teams are going to it's not everybody. It's not everybody. It's just one team. But that the signees for that one team are, that's a fairly life-changing and devastating, piece of news to receive.
And it also is, we've made a lot of comparisons between Sasaki and Shohei Ohtani's situation back in 2017, and rightfully so. Both international amateurs, right? Both are severely limited in terms of how much money they can make as a result of that. But there's a key difference between Sasaki's situation and Ohtani's situation back in 2017. At that point, the international signing period opened on July 2nd and closed the following year on June 15th. So when Ohtani came on the market that winter, there wasn't a question of which signing period he was going to be a part of, whereas there is that question for Sasaki. And so as a result of that, teams in that season had basically already committed the vast majority of their bonus pools to various international amateur players. There was no risk of the team signing Ohtani having to forego those commitments because they'd already signed those players during that signing period. So this is a whole different situation because it looks like Sasaki is going to wait until the new signing period opens on January 15th. And at that point, the whole clock restarts and everyone's spending goes back to zero. And that's why we're in a situation where, you're talking about a number of international amateurs not getting the money that they were not promised, but that they were very confident they were going to receive based on those verbal commitments.
The system's so broken.
Yes,
it's awful, right? It's awful. And I mean, again, like you said, there was a difference there when Ohtani signed, and he didn't have the choice on which signing period to fall under. So of course, it's just different. And this is not new, right? Teams do back out of verbal commitments with players all the time.
Yes,
this would just be on a different level. Because
and it's so late in the game is the real kicker here. Like, it's late November, and I mean January 15th is less than 2 months away at this point, right? If a team still has a verbal commitment at this point with an international amateur, what's been written by several people in the last few days is that you are definitely expecting to sign that player at this stage.
What's also awful is we talked again about that new facility the Diamondbacks have, for instance, in the Dominican Republic, right?
Yeah.
How much goodwill is undone if the Diamondbacks suddenly have to go to multiple Dominican Republic players and tell them all that they're not going to sign them because they're signing Sasaki, right? Like, it's
not great, Derek.
It's not great. And I'll tell you, I mean, that they expressed in their press release, and obviously it's a big deal that Dominican dignitaries were in
president,
president of, right? Like, this is not the kind of thing that's going to go like unnoticed, even if it's just a few guys, because again, it looks shady right after you open this brand new facility with the purpose of this. Now, again, this is an odd situation. It's an odd year, and this isn't like going to necessarily be the norm, but Major League Baseball teams can just kind of like throw their hands up and say, sorry, this isn't our fault. It's the system's fault.
Yeah. I'm thinking of you mentioning the Diamondbacks. I'm thinking of Derek Hall, that press conference that he did just a couple of days ago. He said that the Diamondbacks want to be the team of the Dominican Republic. And it would be hard to say that one day and then a couple months later forego all of your verbal commitments with players in the region. It would be a bit of a bad look. But I guess, the big question here is, what could be done? It's been a broken system for a while. We've known that. Is it just kind of, this is the way it has to be? And Ken Rosenthal over at The Athletic wrote a column about this and proposed a solution of sorts. Ken is advocating for Major League Baseball to step in and basically change the process because of how weird this Roki Sasaki situation is, and allow Sasaki to sign separately from a team's international pool. So teams would still have whatever their normal international pool is. They could still uphold all of those verbal commitments to players. And then there would just be a separate, I don't know how much money would be in it. I don't know what the details would be, but you would just separate those out so that teams could sign Sasaki without having to forego all of their other commitments.
Well, I mean, on one hand, it would be an even playing field, but we don't want an even playing field.
Right.
Because then that's an easy decision for someone like Sasaki to go to the Dodgers, right? A team that just won the World Series and also already has other, his teammates from his Team Japan team, and I mean, again, just familiar faces and people that he knows versus going to, the Milwaukee Brewers or the Arizona Diamondbacks or something like that. Like, and then if you make it that they can just sign him for money, then the Dodgers are going to sign him, and there's no doubt there that the Dodgers are going to have more money to sign him because they'll defer his contract, they'll invest it in Bitcoin, and they'll make more money off of it than they actually pay him. They'll do a pump and dump scheme, and they'll get that money through the roof. So I mean, it doesn't matter. This all comes from Ken Rosenthal's article, and obviously Ken Rosenthal is an amazing mind, and his proposal is pretty good when it comes to how to fix this.
Yeah, I do like the idea of it, and I obviously have a lot of respect for Ken and his opinions, but
like how?
What I keep going back to is if the Dodgers are the team that signs Sasaki, which is still, I think, what we expect to happen. It's not a guarantee, but he still seems
Sean,
to be the
Sean
favorite.
says they're going to get Soto, Sasaki. They're somehow going to get Garrett Cole from the Yankees, even though he's not opting for free agency. Christian Walker is going to be a Dodger. Everybody's going to the Dodgers.
But can you imagine if the Dodgers do sign Sasaki at really any team? I mean, it's not specific to them, but they did just win the World Series, and they are a team that spends a lot more than pretty much everyone else in the league. That would be a tough pill for other teams to swallow. Like, oh, wow, not only did the Dodgers get Sasaki, which, credit to them, that's their right. He chose them. But they also had a unique advantage of being able to still sign all of their other international amateur players that they targeted. Like, international bonus pool money is an asset. Teams trade for it, right? It's hard for me to imagine whatever teams don't sign Sasaki, which is going to be 29 of them, being okay with one team getting what feels like a pretty enormous advantage.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And not to mention the fact that it's just awful. How does a guy, like, I still don't understand labeling someone like this as an international amateur. You know what I mean? Like, that's crazy to me. A guy that's played in a professional league and played at the highest level outside of Major League Baseball is considered an international amateur. But then again, if he's not categorized as that, just go ahead and put a Dodger cap on him now, because then he's just a free agent that they can sign for as much money as they want to, right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the posting system is a whole other conversation we could have, and whether that needs some reform. I agree with you. It is weird that a guy who just had a 2.35 ERA in not Major League Baseball, but
he's the same as a 17-year-old Dominican kid that's never played a day in any kind of professional league.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're clearly comparing apples and oranges here, right? Yeah. Like, it's such a no-brainer for teams to, the fact that it is such a no-brainer for teams to forego their agreements with players that they like, and not just one player, but a lot of players that they like. Yeah. It is still a no-brainer for these teams to sign just Roki Sasaki instead of signing all of those players.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think that's also a symptom of this system that just feels broken to begin with.
Large intimate.
Yeah,
I love how he raises his hand.
Large intimate. Yes.
Here in the back of the class, I'd like to say, in response to what Jesse was just talking about, we have a poll in the chat that I started 4 minutes ago. Would you rather enter the Sasaki sweepstakes or take all the positive PR that you're going to get from keeping these agreements in the Dominican Republic?
And what's that poll at?
Right now, it's about 50-50.
Wow.
We have 53% want to stay in the DR and build some foundation there, and 47% would like to enter the Sasaki sweepstakes.
The one thing about it's not one or the other. The Diamondbacks aren't going anywhere. It's just a matter of, like, it's immediately a bad look right this period right now. And again, it just impacts this year. It doesn't impact a future signing pool. Right now, the Diamondbacks do have more signing pool money for next year than the Dodgers. So the way things are set up right now, let's wait. Okay. Let's just not worry about it, because I don't think it completely undoes the goodwill. And there is one thing that, as much as we talk about this sucks for those young signees that have been brought up by these teams, other Major League Baseball teams are going to be paying attention. So should those guys become essentially like still unsigned international draftee free agents that want to sign with another team, there's going to be teams that are interested in, because if one team was interested in them, other Major League Baseball teams are going to be interested. So it doesn't completely leave them out in the lurch, and maybe it just teaches them an important lesson that this is a business and nobody's going to love you, and they're going to always do something like this over, sometimes over a player, right? Like, this sucks, because this takes me back to having a phone call conversation with Travis Lee and hearing that man still have really bad feelings about being traded to the Phillies based on what he was told by the Arizona Diamondbacks versus what they actually did when push came to shove. When winning was on the line and they felt like they were close, they pulled the trigger on a Curt Schilling trade and basically got rid of a lot of guys that they told were going to be like big parts of the team in the future and all that stuff. It's a nasty side of the business. And one part about it that I realized in that conversation is that doesn't go away. Like, you don't one day get older and you're not like, you know what, I'm okay with that thing that happened. No, he was still mad about it, and the man wasn't even playing baseball anymore. So just something important to remember here when it comes to this, that this is part of the business. And I don't think it's going to be this gigantic, black eye on the Diamondbacks should they actually not go out there and honor those deals in the Dominican Republic or anywhere else with their international signees, because they go after Sasaki. However, it's
an understandable decision if you make it, right?
It is. But it's also not like, there's no way you can justify it and say it's a good look, considering that this would all be happening during the same time where they are talking about investing so much in the Dominican Republic and looking at the young athletes from that island as being potential superstars in Major League Baseball.
I have a lot of respect for all the people who voted to just uphold the verbal commitments with those DR players.
I do too.
I kind of think you're crazy.
You're liars, is what you are.
But I respect your integrity, and we have some very wholesome, we have a lot of people of integrity in the chat, Derek.
I am not one of them.
Appreciate
I'll tell you that much right now.
But yeah, if I'm an MLB GM, I certainly would care about building goodwill in that area, but I mean, Roki Sasaki could be really, really good.
Cam said those kids in the DR have a barbershop in 2K. They'll be all right. You're not wrong.
Well, I saw
pictures of the barbershop, by the way. It is a cool little barbershop. And I saw guys already getting lined up on the Diamondback social media. So that's amazing. But,
there you go.
I will tell you, I don't know. Like, this is a terrible situation. It's another one of those ones where, much like the Juan Soto, situation, at this point, all I'm hoping is that none of these players go to the Dodgers. That's all we can hope for, is that there's some parity in Major League Baseball left and that the Dodgers just don't get everybody.
I think
I'll get Congress involved if I have to.
I think if you're a D-backs fan, then you should be like all in on the Angels rebuild this offseason. Like you want everyone signing
everybody
with
go
the
to the Angels. Yeah. I don't care. They're still never going to win, so it doesn't matter.
And they're one of those few teams that does spend some money and does seem to think that they're in contention, even though some of the numbers say otherwise.
Mike Trout
does deserve it, absolutely. But
Greenway High School alumni. Let's go. Fighting Demons.
There you go.
Anyway. No, he's really not. That's Tim Salmon. That's a different Angels player. We'll be back, though. We have more. Again, if that didn't make you angry enough, talking about the Dodgers getting more good players, we're going to talk about Torey Lovullo finishing much higher than many of you anticipated in the National League Manager of the Year voting. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break. It's that time of the year, and even though baseball is completely gone, there are so many sporting events to enjoy and concerts, which shout out to Game Time for getting me cheap tickets for my daughter to go to the November Nights concert over at Chase Field. You can save up to 60% off by buying last minute for sports, concerts, and so much more. And I did absolutely use that new feature Game Time has called Game Time Picks, and it made it so easy. Beautiful little like teal star just shining in the night, telling me what the best option was on a floor seat for my daughter. And it was incredible how much cheaper that particular ticket was than any of the tickets in the area. So of course that Game Time Picks feature filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Right now, you can see how, of course, your view is going to be from any seat. You can also get all-in pricing, so there's no surprises at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Jesse, what time is it?
It's game time.
Attaboy. All right. Well, of course, we also know it might be new vehicle time for some of you out there. And if you are in the market for a new vehicle, make sure to check out Sanderson Ford, our official vehicle partner. Sanderson Ford is thankful at this time of the year. We all should be thankful. Thanksgiving coming up, but they have lived and prospered for 70 years in Glendale, Arizona. They're very thankful for that, as well as their 500 employees who take care of their customers, making Sanderson Ford America's most awarded Ford dealership for customer satisfaction. So they are saying thank you right now to you, their customer, with a Black Friday thank you sale for the entire month of November with great offers on the new 2024 F-150 trucks, where you can get 3.9% APR financing for 60 months, plus up to $4,000 cash back, similar savings on over 900 new and pre-owned vehicles on the lot. So don't miss out on the Sanderson Ford Black Friday thank you sale. OAC through Ford credit, up to $4,000 cash back, requires trade in a 95 newer vehicle. Offer expires November 30th. Well, little surprise for everybody. We had the Manager of the Year voting. It came down to 3 excellent finalists, and the winner for the National League was the Milwaukee Brewers manager, Pat Murphy, former ASU coach, and of course, just awesome guy all the way around, especially if you ever get the joy of watching him on a John Boy lip reading video. That's worth him winning this award alone. But as you can see here on screen, for those of you that might be listeners, we had Pat Murphy finish first, Mike Schilt from the Padres finished second, and Carlos Mendoza from the Mets finish third. Any surprises there with the top 3, Jesse, before we get to where Torey finished?
I don't think so. I think it had to be these 3 guys in some order as 1, 2, 3. I think the Brewers were probably up against it more than any other team going into this season, just because they don't spend a lot of money. They just traded Corbin Burns. A lot of people expected them to take a step back, and they did very much the opposite, or at least were able to stay one of the best teams in all of baseball. The Mets had a pretty remarkable turnaround this season, but they also spend like $300 million. So it's a little hard to view the Mets as being so much of an underdog going into a season.
Even though that underdog team was the team that did the things that they were doing, right? But yeah, you're right. I mean, they still spent a whole heck of a lot of money on that team.
And Mike Schilt with the Padres, I think, did a phenomenal job. And the Padres are another team that very much outperformed expectations. And for better or worse, Eric, that's ultimately what the Manager of the Year award comes down to, is like, what were you expected to do? What did you actually do? And whatever that delta is, like, that's what determines how these awards go. And it's kind of dumb, but it's the way it is. And I think Pat Murphy is more than deserving. So I'm glad it worked out that way.
Just a quick aside, we can get back to the topic at hand. Oli Marmol got a vote?
He did.
Expectations?
I mean,
the delta couldn't get larger.
Once again, that might be that one rant where he got down on his belly during the middle of being thrown out by an umpire and showed them where the balls were from the ground. That was a pretty phenomenal moment.
I do think it's worth pointing out that the person who gave Oli Marmol that 3rd place vote is also one of the 2 people who gave Torey Lovullo a 2nd place vote in Manager of the Year.
Was it Keith Law?
It was Keith Law, Derek. You nailed it. It was Keith Law. Keith Law, the Manager of the Year vote this year. And on one hand, while I don't understand, particularly Oli Marmol, Torey Lovullo, I do kind of understand. We'll get to that more in a second. It's hard for me to get too worked up about anyone's ballot in this award, because again, it really is the way that we as a baseball community vote on this award doesn't really have anything to do with the manager's performance. It has to do with the team's performance, and we're just sort of attributing that to the manager as if there's a one-to-one connection there. So, like, I don't know, maybe Oli Marmol is actually the best manager in baseball, Derek. I don't know. I can't say, because I haven't seen Oli Marmol do like anything except for speak to the media. Like, all we know is what he does when he speaks to the media.
You should see how offended noted Cardinals fan, large intimate.
I just feel
Kevin
like
Thomas
I'm advocating for Oli Marmol right now. I'm saying I just don't have enough evidence to say that this 3rd place vote is completely baseless. Like, isn't it possible that Oli Marmol actually did a great job in 2024 and that the Cardinals just didn't do their part?
I think we're so far off track of what we actually need to talk about here, which is Torey Lovullo finishing 4th, because I think people in the chat are going to have some questions about that. Torey Lovullo there, the 4th place finisher with 8 points over Rob Thompson from the Philadelphia Phillies, which is interesting.
Who got a first place vote, which is also one of the more interesting takeaways.
Yeah, because based on what I've seen from Phillies fans, they are distraught over where it happened, and they are like, they want change. They want change, much like so many Diamondbacks fans want change. But
it was a Philly area writer who had Rob Thompson first.
Not surprised.
Interesting.
Not surprised. But I will say, really, at the end of the day, when you look at what Torey Lovullo did with this team this year, finishing at 89, total wins and having the #1 offense in Major League Baseball, those two things, if I told you that's where the Diamondbacks were going to finish at the beginning of the year, I think you would be pretty satisfied with that. You probably also would have assumed that they would have made the playoffs with 89 wins, but the joke's on you. They didn't. And I think that's the main thing here that's keeping us all back from agreeing with Torey Lovullo even being a 4th place vote getter or 4th place, finisher here on the manager of the year voting, right? Like, the team didn't go to the playoffs. That's a disappointment, and there's no way that that he should be given credit for that. And that's what a lot of people, I imagine, assume. I think it's different when you saw this team day in and day out have to kind of struggle through these injuries and struggle to find a way to put together this lineup. The job that they did with the pieces that they were given, and how, I guess, the success that guys that were added to this team to kind of fill holes had as well. Like, it's hard to not say that, the success is attributed to the manager. You could also attribute the fact that they fell 1 win short of making the playoffs to the manager as well. So it could go both ways. I'll just continue to say Torey Lovullo, despite what some people might think, is an incredible human being and an incredible manager. I think he does a great job. I think his players love him. I think he does a great job of bringing the team together and having that team chemistry that's so important, and just having that, I guess, that clubhouse, be in sync in the way they are, right? Like, it starts at the top, and it starts with Torey. You could also, once again, like I said, blame him for, the team falling just short as well. There were a lot of times during the season that decisions he made were a bit confounding, and you can't, blame it on anybody else but the manager. I just think sometimes we're too quick to blame the performance of individual players on the manager, and that's what came down to it at the end of the year.
I mean, yeah, there's definitely a population of people out there who believe that Torey Lovullo is like solely responsible for the Diamondbacks not making the postseason, which I think is absolutely outrageous. And not to say I think Torey is necessarily a perfect manager, or his in-game decision making. I think you could poke some holes at that. Like, I think there's some valid arguments to be made that Torey should maybe approach certain things differently. But on the whole, it's really hard for me to buy into any argument of Torey Lovullo being a central reason that the Diamondbacks did not go as far as they did. And on the flip side, as you said earlier, like, the Diamondbacks had a whole bunch of injuries this season. Like, if I had told you that Jordan Montgomery was going to come in and kind of be a mess and get hurt a little bit, and that Zach Gallen would miss a month, and that Erod and Merrill Kelly would both miss 4 months, and that the Diamondbacks would still win 89 games, like, you can also make a case in favor of Torey for manager of the year that could be fairly compelling. This conversation looks a lot different if the Diamondbacks win one more game and make the playoffs, or if the Mets lose one more game, or the Braves lose one more game and they make the playoffs that way. So I get it. People are frustrated that they didn't make the postseason, and you kind of want to point the finger at somebody. I just don't think there's a ton of evidence that finger should be pointed like solely at Torey Lovullo.
80% of the people in the chat right now saying that Torey did deserve his 4th place vote.
Hey, there we go. Well,
we just have a lot of positives.
Well, I mean, based on 50% of the replies to that tweet that we're showing you, I would think things would have been a little bit closer, but we appreciate you guys for knowing ball. Really, that's what it comes down to for me. If you're someone that's saying fire Torey after that season, I have a hard time believing ball, and that's the opinion I'll stick with. I'm sorry if that offends you, but if you think Torey Lovullo should be fired after this season, I think you don't know ball. I'll put it out there. And I'm looking forward to those of you that are going to argue with me.
Thunderbolt's going to lose his
He's
mind.
going to lose his mind. Hats off, though, to the 2 first-year managers that won the award, both with a connection here to the Valley. Pat Murphy in the National League, and then Stephen Vogt in the American League, Jesse's buddy.
Yeah, former Diamondback and Azusa Pacific.
That's right. They're very close, those guys. It's wild.
I'm wearing my Azusa Pacific hoodie in Stephen Vogt's honor today. So I'm an Azusa Pacific alum myself, in case that wasn't already clear.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, he never stops talking about it. It's wild. He's crazy for that school. But we will have more, of course, on the aforementioned Rays situation and if they're going to need to relocate. Hopefully it'll make you feel a little bit better about what's going on with Chase Field. We'll have all of that on the other side of this break. Of course, the MVP vote is coming up, and if you want to be the MVP of your bedroom, you got to check out Blue Chew, which is an online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost in a chewable form. And when you win this MVP award, there'll be no doubt, because there's only one voter. Maybe, I don't know, depending on how things going in your life, but maybe there's only one voter, and that person is going to vote you the MVP of your sex life, because right now Blue Chew will help you get there and help you have more fun than you've ever had. They say there's nothing sexier than confidence, and Blue Chew can help give you the confidence where it counts. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free when you use our promo code ALLCITY at checkout. Just pay $5 for shipping. That's bluechew.com, promo code ALLCITY to receive your first month for free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank you for sponsoring this podcast. Of course, a great time can be had out at Chicken and Pickle anytime, because Chicken and Pickle is an amazing indoor-outdoor entertainment complex that includes a casual chef-driven restaurant with lots of delicious food to be had. Of course, a full bar, and most importantly, so many indoor and outdoor pickleball courts, a variety of yard games, and enough space for you to bring your entire friends, family group, whatever you're looking for. I know sometimes it's hard, especially around this holiday season, to find a space big enough for you and yours to hang out. So Chicken and Pickle is the perfect place to do so. If you're new to pickleball, you can learn the game there. They have a newbie night, which will also include a $10 Chicken and Pickle gift card and have you learning the game with other like-minded individuals at a similar skill level. Or if you're really, really down with pickleball, you can join us for the PHNX Winter Pickleball Tournament on December 14th at Chicken and Pickle. We doubled the field for the first time with 48 teams this year. All skill levels welcome. PHNX prizes to be had, food and drink specials, and so much more. So join us out there on December 14th. And of course, head to Chicken Pickle anytime to have a great time. You can head to their website, chickenandpickle.com, to see all the fun you can have at their Glendale location. Speaking of locations, Jesse, especially big ones like Chicken and Pickle.
It's a good transition.
The Rays are possibly leaving their home of Tropicana Field. And things when it comes to this situation is not getting any better. I feel like, obviously, the damage done to Tropicana Field changed things. This all started with a vote, actually, back in July about potentially building a new stadium in St. Petersburg. And they have kind of, the vote actually approved the stadium, but then there were bonds that needed to be voted on and how those bonds will be used. It gets very boring and political, very Parks and Recreation from that point. But I'll say it's gotten very contentious, and that's something that's kind of surprising here. The Pinellas County Board of Commissions decided yesterday to postpone a vote to approve bonds that would finance the ballpark's construction. The new vote will take place on December 17th, and this is the second time that this vote has been delayed. Meanwhile, the Rays are kind of furious about this, and they have been they issued a letter prior to the vote stressing how important it was that a decision be made on these bonds as quickly as possible. They said that basically the year date of 2028 can no longer be met, and now 2029 is in jeopardy as far as a new ballpark being built.
This is a mess. The year, Derek, is 2047, and all 32, we've probably expanded by that point, all 32 major league teams play in minor league facilities because none of the owners were able to get the ballpark deals that they wanted. And the counties and the owners, and it never worked out. And so all the teams wound up playing in minor league stadiums. The Diamondbacks are now the Bisbee Frisbees. They're down in Bisbee, Arizona. Very well worth the road trip, but it's going to take you about 3 hours to get there. That's the future that I foresee, Derek, because none of these negotiations seem to be going all that well.
What's wild is something that you noticed about these negotiations, and this can go with any situation. I think back upon the Coyotes with Glendale. I think about the Coyotes with Tempe. I think about the Coyotes a lot and everywhere they tried to move. I also think about, in general, what we've heard about the Diamondbacks and Chase Field and just other teams, the terrible situation with the Sacramento A's and all of that other stuff going on. But right now, the thing that really sucks about this is like the Rays are trying to use the pressure of time slipping away and money being wasted to expedite the approval of these bonds. Whereas meanwhile, the commissioners and the people who are voting on it simply sound like they want to know how the bonds will be used. And I think baseball teams are just used to being like, no, you don't get to know how we use our money. We don't reveal how we use our money. You just give us money and then we keep it, and then it's a secret how we spend it, right? So that might not be the case here, and there might need to be a comprehensive plan put forth before this board. But instead of doing that, the Rays seem more dedicated to pressuring the board into getting a decision made quickly so that it doesn't impact the timeline on them creating a new ballpark. And I'm not totally against the board here when it comes to that. And I also will say there was a fairly electric quote that I came across in regards to one of the commissioners who actually voted for the stadium in July. So he approved it in July. But this was Commissioner Brian Scott, who said the following, and it's pretty scathing of the Rays. Quote, "I think the Rays strategy sucks, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it has for quite some time. They are horrible communicators, and I think they're the most politically tone-deaf organization that I've ever met in my life." End quote.
Wow.
My guy didn't hold back.
That's wild.
Really, when he talks about that. And I mean, there's people that, of course, are talking about, there's other things that are talking about, like the Rays essentially, again, being more invested in pressuring them to get a decision done quickly rather than trying to provide the, accurate information and things that they're looking for. Right.
And you can understand why the county is hesitant, because there was just a hurricane in the area. Like, they have bigger fish to fry right now than the Tampa Bay Rays ballpark in 2028. And when this guy is talking about the Rays being a little bit tone deaf, I imagine that's what he's getting at. Like, give us some time to kind of sort through how to use our taxpayer money the best right now. This is an unforeseen situation, obviously. This is a total mess. Obviously, the Rays are already playing in a minor league facility in 2025. And who knows where this goes from here. Some people are writing about the Rays relocating by 2026 if they don't have any kind of a firm plan in place. We've seen in Arizona, in this market, what can happen if a team has no place but a minor league type of facility to play in for an extended period of time.
I told you I think about them a lot.
That's sort of what happened with the Coyotes. And eventually the league is going to be like, nuh-uh, you're not allowed to do this. We need to support our players and their families better than this and get them back in a major league quality facility. And if there is not a solution to be found in that area, then Major League Baseball very well might look elsewhere.
I'm gonna tell you this much: you can't pressure people, because sometimes when you try to do so, all it makes it feel is like there's more. It's more like there's details being left out and that you're scamming them. And I mean that, like, major league teams, professional sports teams, have taken advantage of counties across the country. There's no doubt about that in some situations. So I think really the biggest thing that I've read about this is that they're trying to use this gas plant entertainment district that they're adding on as like a major part of it that the city should have to pay for, when essentially at the end of the day, it's just going to be part of the ballpark. It's going to be connected to the ballpark, and it's going to be a thing that brings people to the ballpark and helps make the construction of the ballpark that much easier. So, got to be open, got to be honest. And that situation seems like it's turning for the worse very quickly. But
yes,
we will definitely keep you posted on that as far as that goes. But we also thank you guys so much for stopping by today. We always appreciate your time. You can follow us both on Twitter. I'm at Cap_Caveman with a K. This man is at Jesse and Friedman. Most important person to follow is our guy Kevin Thomas on the ones and twos. Large Intimate is at Kev Tom Writes. And again, I'm not even going to put that up on the screen. You're just going to have to figure that out. Follow our account at PHNX_DBacks, but all roads do lead to at PHNX_sports on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We thank you guys again so much for your time. We will see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Hope you have a wonderful evening. And until then, remember, kids, baseball is fun, but it's so much more fun when you know where you're going to play baseball in 2047.
We all silly like the mayor.